Hello, America. I've been trying to talk to you about things that the law says that they're supposed to be immediately responded to. Not just me, other people have been. For example, with CNN, Fox News, where they do good reporting, where the news people do good reporting, where everyone's a victim, reacting. Originally and still it was as knaves, K-N-A-V-E. Everybody looked that up. No one told American history correctly, which it requires telling how sickly distinctly the North and South was involved with slavery because of a breaching method, a human fact-cheating nature breaching method that knew with things like slavery, it was slavery against everyone, that nature would demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures. Wrongdoers. Wrongdoing itself. Everything has a nature because nature's nature. Why would you not root with nature's nature? Nature's nature has it further, nature's nature, which is its identity of relationship to itself, positive or negative. A semi-ancient human breaching method demonstrably realized that they could trick, hurt, persuade, and force countries individually grouped and together to self-defend and to simultaneously not realizing increasingly self-value, self-defending the science/S wrong, not using it, and increasingly valuing it not having been used, and that increasingly defended. They realized they could engineer premises treatments in conjunction to all identity of the ground relationships, all database relationships, before America's founding parents were even born. This was sickly, distinctly entrenched in North and South America. Through generations, every time they say, someone says, George Washington owned slaves, and then people have fights about people who read books. They make uses of knowledge, no. See, the messengers of modern religions are multi-front counters to, in other words, for example, the Old Testament. There are proofs that it was named the Old Testament because they knew they could counter-trick the people that would preserve the message behind Jesus Christ and his followers that really enabled it to be a self-valued role, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously with other religions. Thank God for a counter at the same time. Because what science proves that there are obligations needed for equality of fact-cheating nature to have a scientific value of all identities of value progression individually grouped and together. In other words, the value of that distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as itself an observable identity of value progression, value/value progression generated. Only the extent of it is debatable. This came before physics, most practically, what generated physics had to be generated. So the ancient English was English was demonstrably revealed to teach this. But people look up things about history and increasingly self-valued with their convictions and the opinions, the judgment tied to premises, the premises treatments, premises plural. The only see this is the one. This is one that is is an identity of volume. Any identity of volume that can be made up, especially one as a scientific value, like an imaginary number. You have to make up, for example, to program a vector in relationship to the coordinate systems with computers and the screens, the interfaces. These are abridged sciences and communications platforms. So people want to debate about soul, want to debate about things like religion. The religious place still won't follow mandated law, because originally and still the interbranch and the foreign together in a way that keeps them first through instances. Every instance it has means with it. There are revelations inseparable from how for example, of how one truth that is true always. What caused slavery was predicate act delivery system method, was criminal insidiousness natures. Regardless if it wasn't their fault and they were just forced to roles. For example, this is, and they exploit too. See, this is meant to exploit here and there. That's why they have black and they have a little bit of color from, and they have a little bit of representatives from the semi-ancient nations that were already grouped naturally, but then that became criminally foreign influenced. And the plan involved people, we go into courts today in America and we still don't have the right to be remain innocent until proven guilty. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. On one of the news networks like Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, could have been CBS, NBC, or ABC. They reported that 97% is the conviction rate of the courts. But the courts themselves already also originally still recorded, confessed, and demonstrated having been increasingly self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, premises treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments, finite, active, and progressive value treatments, as qualities of fact treatment nature consciously using and having used, as is what is actually recorded. The same thing there too. Like if we want to have a conversation to keep it real with ourselves here or there, they're locked here and there together, hundreds of nations at once, as knaves with nuclear bombs. That's what calls itself integrity and has to justify itself. That's what has to increasingly self-value. The reason there's poverty, people freak out if there's an economic block. Okay, there's a virus, so we have to stay away a little bit to let it go away, and then no one gets it. We can't do that because we're on a worse than torture system. Our founding parents had words forced on them just like everyone else. They had that nature of theater called criminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer, police form criminal. The lawyers originally they're told too, to correlation nature. They're demonstrably criminally foreign influenced, delusions raw, but rule crimes predators simultaneously. So freedom of speech was forced not as in other words, people could speak, but not as a quality that could be speak true. People had to pretend other anyway. This is breaching screen method that had it sickly distinctly everywhere, and had the roles sickly distinctly. I'll give you the means to that's what we'll do it together. We'll use art, and we'll change the colors in this movie. It's not a movie though. /S. Increasing amount of economic income that will go 100%. There's actors that will donate their time, their efforts. YouTubers will. They just have to know about it. and we'll tell American history right. Well, as bad as it was, and when everyone's only capable of speaking about it, it's worse than that, because people are only capable of entertaining what can't defend itself without, again, the criminally foreign influence uses of premises, criminally foreign influence premises treatments, insidious natures of logic, and of uses of difference and of exception nature, to keep why and how all words, like especially those, different, especially every word differentially, especially too. So, for example, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you three things that are true all ways. Not denying any exceptions, not valuing them being or having been denied. There are three types of communications. There are nonverbal communications. There are verbal communications. And proofs that there are hyper communications is how someone could lie. Use truths for lies while making up lies simultaneously. See, what is simultaneous as a subject is prevented, and that's where integrity is. And all exception nature are masters of master sequence shifting styles, self-value, in relationship to instances. See sequence in relationship to identity too. So nothing is binary. For example, people, they were hiding and are hiding exceptions individually grouped and together, the experts on computers. They hid this from the Attorney General of the United States. You know, the significance of this. It's more complicated. It's not, and simpler than that too. It's how we're being and having been exploited as an identity of volume, with its own identity of volume science, that these are tactical ulterior from, to exploit its identity of relationship to the ground. I'll gather around vaccines. You do not have a breaching screen pretending to be about peaceful protests and for uses of peace that are all through different motivations to screen the actual motivation, where that knows every real science, real integrity needs to use how people use peace and pretended passions and emotions. Originally still pretending patriotism. You can see it, you can discern it, we will discern it in relationship to how they cannot follow mandated law. So I'm speaking to people that don't even have internet. I'm speaking to people that can't hear me. But that's also the identity of volume onto and as where anyone, because everyone is forced to equality of fact, cheap nature, no free speech, identity thefts and frauds. People say, oh, who cares? And that's when you think, oh, I don't care about that, it's right. In other words, they're using the experts on everything are using that already having been employed as life progressions, as standing natures that increasingly cannot afford to defend their styles and premises treatments and of logic and of reason and uses of their own names and titles and of uses of other people's names and titles. To hide their sequence shifts, their roles with that self-value actually recorded, to hide that with everyone tied to them, all victims. And then they want to be known as victim predators because they want to sequence shift. They want to pretend that things are in databases are real. They want to pretend they didn't realize what they said, especially regarding how our hierarchies are criminally foreign influence here and there. All exceptions in exception nature are differentially criminally foreign influenced, and they're all constantly criminally foreign influenced. For example, the branches of government They switch names individually, grouped and together, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. They self-value that. Where it was and how it was is simultaneously being and having been exploited. This is a method that is attached to especially all identity ground locations, cyclically, non-distinctly. That's why, relative to how it is cyclically, distinctly designed to keep how cyclically, non-distinctly, no one could take it. Because how cyclically, distinctly is all juxtaposed. Victims, reactions, and defenses of that as knaves, where their defenses of that is being and having been applied against others. As strangers, all exceptions, exception nature is set up and was set up to exploit that, to pretend other, to need to. And this is what led up to the World Trade Center attack in it. For example, in Hartford courts and the Britain courts, and other Connecticut courts and their family members, and the people involved with them, like deans and their kids, on and off campuses, were involved with predicate acts and wrongdoing as victims, even whereas victim predators. But so they want to have differences, leaving out the people in the backgrounds that were involved, and how this is maintained by the same people from Wethersfield, like a DeMoro family and a Scalora family, were from Wethersfield, Hartford, and Glastonbury, and other cities like Avon, and people associated with Watkinson School, recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. These are all the schools were used criminally, and this is a way that uses all the identities of the ground businesses, all the identities in them, exploiting where and how identity works. Exploiting where and how we are a value/value progression per a native system that humanity revealed together, because they had it reveal itself before sciences became criminally foreign influenced. They had become criminally foreign influenced before, but not archetypally. So in other words, the ancients had more sophistication than us regarding understanding quality of fact, achieving nature. See, but we have the ancients and what they claim to be probable and practical, increasingly being and having been self-valued, criminally foreign influence, and delusions wrought. And that method knew that we would have to speak of arguing with each other, or agreeing to disagree. And if anyone tries, it's so much that if anyone tries to use the short words proper, use ratiocination, and what ratiocination and pseudo-ratiocination share properly, the Trinity properly, the Trinity per correlation, which is probably and demonstrably, when Jesus Christ He is the Alpha and He is the Omega. Alphabet, A is for Alpha. Omega, O is for Omega. Note how it's 2 letters over from the middle letter. 13. Mother M. M is for mother. N is for neutrality. Youtuber Anthony Wall. Twill heal you all that way. Not me. So I'm not a lawyer, not a doctor, not a police form. Also, doctors have been attaching me and other people since we were kids. Ones with badges too. Involved with the CIA, with FBI. And with their family members, and with locations next to schools, involved with predicate acts method /S on off the campuses. that also consciously juxtaposed and maintains juxtaposed ulterior motivations, natures, needs, interests, uses of everyone around everybody. All identity ground locations were set up for this trap. For example, there was slavery, north and south. For example, they blamed on other things, others, and selves. When they say, oh, George Washington owned slaves, they're saying that dishonestly. And those as victims, where, in other words, that was that's what George Washington meant. In other words, they didn't have free speech yet. Oh, we win a physical battle, it's over. Forget about how all the breaching methods still had all these entrenched roles and everyone was shock and awe. And that was too complicated to speak about because everyone's trying to make it. Because everyone's the same exact identity of volume, blaming other things, others, and blaming selves for what the breaching method was doing remotely. This was sophistication here before anyone. This knew that individually grouped and together, it could find what cares and what doesn't. And what I'm talking about care. I'm talking about what cares about how, in other words, they have cruel and unjust punishment originally still used to keep this. And that's increasingly self-value for the identity thefts and frauds methods that show that the method with it. But we need free speech and we need mandated law. But if you call up the police department, they already pretended people had conversations with them, even on the police department and through time. There are affidavits, they know there's evidence about this. They'll say, oh, I don't see the evidences. They see it in their consciousnesses. They know it. So they forge and switch names into brands. They pretend they're just looking out for their colleagues. In other words, they're hiding life progression roles. This is what most furthers the overt criminal enterprises. There's a Sammy the Bull Gravano. I don't know him. There are people from Weathersfield Interbranch and military who are involved with attaching me and others to fake locations. They set up exceptions where you know people. I don't know people at all, like a Joshua Julian, who's with all these people, one of the people on Facebook page of a principal child offender before he got caught. And there were a bunch of doctors. There's a Dr. Zeman, and there's a Judge Killian involved with other judges with Hartford courts, and with their patients and criminals, and with people with the community center, all sides of it, through time involved with the intelligence community, also all along Route 3. They have where there was an Arch Pizza, and they have a Zano's where there's a dry cleaner, and where there's one near the Southstein Highway. There's a Dr. Graham, a female doctor, who's also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with Middletown courts, and people involved with predicate acts with a Phil Cololo, per a Bob Chase, but he didn't show me any writing. See, Phil Cololo's involved with identity thefts and frauds and predicate acts recorded when I was I didn't even know him. That was just one. I recorded. They had private school kids tied to him. And his roles with predicate acts on my street, with a house before that his cousin lives in now. But since before his cousin moved in, there were my town's police chiefs and judges were involved with the house. And then through time, a Chris Cullen and a Joe Aiello, for example, they were involved with uses of Facebook for evidence racketeering, where they're pretending to be legitimately investigating things and perceiving things, but they're using it to hide their life progressions in their family members. And their uses of identity ground locations, though. See, everyone can do that way they want, but in other words, they're putting people into themselves into other people's businesses, criminally foreign influenced. They're pretending they're blaming other things like politics, like the other side. So they're increasingly self-valuing how those, both their partisanship and their non-partisanship is simultaneously, differentially, constantly criminally foreign influenced, complete remote possession of an archetypal breaching method, archetypal criminal enterprise. So one of the people associated, one of the families and their extended families, a DeMoro family, also with Scaloras, are one of the ones involved with the World Trade Center. And they made in confessions and demonstrations roles that they involve people with the, the victims, as victims to more than that. But if you try to talk about it legitimately, they're going to hide where and how they've been using the right to lie on a mass scale. They have acting coaches, teachers of acting, professors at Central Connecticut State University, involved with like locations next to the state judicial branch offices like Wethersfield Pizza. There's a whole bunch of ways, a whole bunch of people, victims. But if you try to teach about how they were victims since they were kids, and so I have to talk about how they're victim predators anyway. But you can't leave out the courts and the military and the overt criminal enterprises involved with her boyfriends and neighbors, involved with identity thefts and frauds and sequence shifts. And all along that Route 3 that goes by the state judicial branch offices. It goes right by Wethersfield Pizza too, but that's on the South Steen Highway. And so they spoke to me through others. And then they made up something, I don't know, there's a Steven Stocko that put me in fake words with what he's involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield Police, forging and switching names. And with other people on and off the state judicial branch offices through time involved with identity thefts and frauds. I never had a conversation with so these are people also with medical racketeering, and what they do is they say, they call people names, and they say that person got delusions. The person's manic. When people are trying to slander you in context they're starting fights between people to make issues, pretend to lie about what came before that. So when you try to defend the people around you, where we're all forced to speak through other people, but they're putting lies in there. There were also a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital who were quoting, for example, a guy named Britt. He only says his name is Britt. He's a nurse. He's one of the nurses involved with with Wethersfield Police, who answer the phones for them, who are involved with the sales and uses of drugs like ecstasy, and their roles with untimely deaths, all different kinds of drugs. There are also New Britain courts and different courts and police forms that train them in the state police on off Central Connecticut State University, involved with these games. They're involved with wire crimes, painting people to fake locations, fake ties to other people on their campuses, intercities with people that did that in the past when they were kids. And it's much more complicated than that, but it's much more simple too. And so we can observe what keeps that phenomena true. My vaccines to you. So we have to have mandated law followed. There's also some. They also, I don't know what they look like, all of them yet. And these are what they've been. These are people through time what they've been doing further. I caught them with uses of, like taking pictures of girls from the back, and how they use it on, like there's a picture of a girl from a back which looked like it might have been one of the classrooms inside the principal sex offender school. And there's also on Twitter. Now these are also people with coordinated and timed uses of Facebook and the Facebook page of the principal sex offenders school with the same groups, who also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated that Ian is one of the people who is or is not FBI, but he's one of the ones recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with FBI, and someone pretending to be Ian, who's FBI, but who's also his neighbors. There's a Perone family who's involved with a whole bunch of people with the Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicles, and their locations, and with campuses, and with a church, St. Anthony's Church, and the buildings next to it, with child offenders. But these are ones with courts and with former director of the FBI and his co-defendants. And these are juxtaposed natures of child abusers and roles with their patients and criminals, including a principal child offender, involved with them with untimely deaths, with the people that were selling it through the Wethersfield Police, the people that answered the phones for 3 years, and one's answering them now. This is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. They have roles with Asian countries, and they're hiding behind that here and there because their delusions rot, and they're involved with drugs and medicines crimes, identity thefts, and frauds. Also, Joe DeMoro recorded, confessed that they were involved with attaching me to sequence shifts, fake words, and locations with them. I don't know the rest of them. There's a Massimo. I never had a conversation with my life except for online. Excuse me, Massimo, for having to be aggression, because it's related to the you can't film the police, and the police have been using such to hide exceptions of that, to prevent exceptions of that, while simultaneously, they recorded themselves, forging names and switching sequences with foreign and domestic military leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and as the investigators since it, on and off the World Trade Center, on and off the Ninth Circuit, next to it. Also, people that were involved and are involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University. They also have a new system where they could just type in a warrant, arrest for someone, and then they bring them into their systems, like with a huge bond, and or they bring them into their systems that are needing to hide anyway. They're recorded since they were kids, involved with identity thefts and frauds, with instances that also show were simultaneously sequence shifts that were self but valued by people on and off campuses that had roles, like with a former mayor, Gold's daughter, Debbie Gold. She told a whole bunch of lies with people that were later proven involved with pension thefts, bookmaking, shylocking, and things like that. I don't even know what shylocking is, but that's on the record in a court case I observed in 2006, a district court case in Connecticut, with director of the FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants. 3 of his co-defendants were involved with kids with my high school with predicate acts, and that were also used to cover live aggressions, and using a method where you don't know, where you're not being able to get, everyone's forcing everyone to speak through others, because there are other people involved with the arrays of fake sides, fake inclusion with the same sequence shifts and wrongdoing tied to relevant predicate acts. In some cases, those were our predicate acts, like falsified police reports roles they had and have, and cases after that, cases associated with that, and investigations of that are used to make fake sides of correlation nature. Where there's a I don't know her name, but it's on the records, and their lawyers, and ones with badges are associated with a Pandol family, and with intelligence family involved with Saudis. They attached to their roles with predicate acts leading up to the World Trade Center, in the intercities too, interbranch, on and off the South State Middle School, on and off the post offices, on and off the locations next to it. They have roles with programs with each age. They have roles with narratives towards what is values treatments, resources. This is resource. Follow mandated law, and it'll have reliefs. You guys, that they're not letting me talk to you. They put people, in other words, it's true you should value every YouTube subscriber. But if you have people coming up testing you, when one of my premises is, one of the evidences is that how I've been asking to report things, and they've been replacing audio and video actually recorded with fabricated audio and video. And then they're lying about the behavior, they're about their perception of the behavior of the people after that. So it is also critical that we deal with the physical delusions that all of the networks have, and make sure they don't, that we under, you know, they started this. In other words, then they pretend it's personal, because they don't want anyone to use what is simultaneous, what is great that the news does, what is bad simultaneous. Because they don't want correlation. They don't want free speech. Because their jobs that are reliant upon other people's information and databases that were since before computers involved employed to keep live progressions measured, locked, layered, would cause slavery. Now, see, we should have been way advanced from this by now. But just like, for example, there's a Native American on YouTube somewhere, I can't find the video. And he said that we must read each other's dreams. For example, it becomes simultaneously harder and simultaneously easier to read the dreams of Obama and of Trump and of President Biden / chief. Chief is lowercase / bigger case. We'll learn this method. I call it algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic. And we'll use prayer as a science. See, when we don't have prayer as a science, when we have theory first, we can use prayer as a science because there are 5 distinct identities of value / value progression. And when they are 5, all both positive onto their identity of volume science, which has a positive or negative relationship to itself, in relationship to Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to the rest of space nature. In while as this identity of volume science. This is identity science. This is where we have each identity has a semi-nature relationship to this perfect value progression. That inventions work or not in relationship to it, they are further positive or not in relationship to it. Know how a criminal insidiousness nature, like a wrongdoer, will make and can make and get away with making positive or negative facts treatments that are not really true. And though they're also using truths for lies. And they're also putting lies between truths. Where they're maintaining a quality of fact treatment nature that a breaching method maintained, self-cultivated. It propagated this here since before our founding parents were born in here and in Russia. This is why we are not supposed to talk about Mao. We're all still in the identity theft / fraud trap. You guys won't let us speak for ourselves. Follow mandated law. There are only 3 branches of government and they're caught. They also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated this is involved with methods where they make instances where you know if someone one name you pretend they know that they're going to pretend they don't realize they thought you were in other locations with them. All exceptions, exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. They're pretending other. This is where and how courts are recorded originally and still. Conscious uses of time always too fast and simultaneously too slow to afford the quality of fact treatment nature that can real quick and real slow and proper. Right, proper. This hasn't happened since semi-ancient times. All you have to do is admit we're in a semi-ancient trap. Before cars, the pathology of homes, of roads, the scale of infrastructure, of means to it, everyone's opinion in relationship to it was as victims. If someone wants to deny that, they're going to have to use criminally foreign influence premises treatments, physical delusions. They're going to have to demonstrate how as victim predators. Let's just state what is true always, and not blame it on other things other than themselves, like racism. Let's blame it on the predicate acts delivery system method. Let's blame it on how someone pretending passions and emotions to care for science can't pretend that's science. In other words, give freedom to any block of people and give them a tractor while we still have them. They're going to go into electronic cars. We had all this all these cars, tractors, cranes, stuff to go around with nuclear bombs, air things, but we're in the same thing since before cars, before our founding parents' the same pathology of houses. I learned at Central Connecticut State University, they threatened, hurt, and killed you and your family if anyone was found out to be talking about building anything else other. So we have a whole bunch of sick nations that have to use their names. Have to use our names. Fake. And they already did that. So that, in other words, they have to self-value that in relationship to the value treatments. Identity of the ground. Identities treatments. Dishonestly. So we have means to, make reliefs for businesses too. First thing we could lock down value systems. We could make an agreement to afford, especially for nations that can't defend themselves, and they won't be able to get up to nuclear weapons, which it takes to defend themselves now. Take that out of the equation more and more, change the nature of everything, make everything easier by building for free. By giving for free an identity of the ground relationship to itself, that volume science that is also positive unto itself. That is also where evolution's fruits and gifts come from. It means out of nowhere. What is peace? And what is the opposite of peace? Those are still discernible things. Anything that's discernible is in demonstration of what is all ranges at once. And or it's loss. Leaf of Hades. Tempest Marcius calls you through the breeze. Hear your name return. Legion. See. Well, must be. It's all we need to do. Regarding the we'll tell them, in other words, the three branches of government, you guys are corrupt. All private tied to you guys are corrupt. You're still delusions raw. I know you guys are victims. I know overt criminal enterprise is a problem. That's why you guys are in collusion with them too, though. Differentially, constantly. That's recorded too. Especially online. So as worse as things got, it made it easier to show how there's ways to make positive out of negative positively or negatively. See, that's why they have the Trinity obfuscated, worse than obfuscated. The people at this peak of sciences They're all bridge sciences. So they value criminally legalized, criminal insidiousness natures, mass wrongdoers, and mass identities of criminal insidiousness, and of styles of victims that are making positive and negative treatments and names treatments and sequence treatments anyway, pretending that interbranch has integrity anyway. Where they're victims, that they don't have integrity with anyone else. That's why online, non-doctors are with the doctors online and offline, especially the ones with badges. These are involved with juxtaposed natures of child abuse, of elder abuse, of locations uses of parks, uses of the places next to them, because of how they've been exploiting how we are a value/value progression. They perfected this since before video. They were taking pictures of people, timed, so they could use that as evidence to pretend people knew them before that. So they could fabricate audio and video records. Think about it. They have even the qualities of marijuana before they started legalizing it. And they have their narratives going back and forth. They can't defend themselves and how both political parties and the agencies and where they go to work and the locations next to them were involved with what kept and keeps them criminally foreign influenced. Then roles as Connecticut intercities already having been used to highlight progression and preemptively. This is a vertically and horizontally perfected, databases oriented, but identity ground. Self-value. Roles, we knew that we would have to self-value it because of the way the value progression native that we are as individuals, groups, and as the species. It wants us to know those three distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous possessions as its own possession of itself. It wants us to discern which is scientifically discernible, which is its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously, so we can see its distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to all things. Bach sings as a trinity. We're perceiving this from inside, what is more finite than the smallest, most finite thing of physics. Then and while physics is value, it is so distinctly, while non-distinctly, and simultaneously. So we cannot over-glorify physics and math, originally instilled, recorded by science, actually honest, delusions raw, criminally foreign influence, and self-valuing needs to pretend other by self-valuing the law of criminally foreign influence. Right there with them. Now this breaching method knew that would be. And I knew that all exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration of the same thing. They have the military, they have DCF, they have the military structure of the and all that, and the Coast Guard and people involved with the databases with the prisons. There's ones with the fire departments, there's ones with the prisons involved with Sandy Hook. Same ones involved with the prisons with West Hartford, Wethersfield. I mean, with the fire departments. Prisons, same thing. People that used to work for them, people that work for them now. They're family members. Where everyone speaks about knows everybody else. This is a method that perfected itself before our founding parents, whose parents were born. This is a method that is exploiting all that's manifest in relationship to the self-valued exploitation of those short words capable of ourselves from the youngest ages. But for the offensive theories and physical delusions pretending other. and needing to pretend other too simultaneously. So they need to pretend they're against things like racism, the white people, the white people that are sick, in collusion with the white, black, everything in collusion, everyone, fake sides, this group, that group. Their premises treatments when we study this. So we're gonna pay for it, and we're gonna get everyone and we can get executive orders that doesn't impose on anyone. There's all kinds of places we can make temporary space locations for people that have nowhere to go, and for people that are packed on each other in this trap, while we have to move this back, forth, while we're building identity of the ground to an identity of relation to itself that is evolution's course. It's leading. This is below bottom. That's what science says. Who disbelieves? Have them pick one name in sequence, please. The branches of government, they switch names. If you try to use logic proper. I'm going to teach you how to think. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to delineate the delusions from their criminal foreign influence. They were roles the whole time, the ones with badges too. Enter everything. You have some sick people running thinking. So they have cruel and unjust punishment. They have word drugs. Meanwhile, these are medicines racketeering predators. Way worse than like, they want to put kids in jail for pot. Even if they don't put them in jail, they put them in that system. They know those databases those are corrupt, but they've only had corrupt onto them. They already blamed other things other than themselves. They can't afford correlation nature to show what is actually recorded as the records. They need the mob rule where they think they have the right to assemble. Where? Well, but you have to, as long as you get this thing. Those locations where you have to get that thing from. They take those things, they stack more and more names. Walls with fabricated audio and video to replace what's actually recorded. No one's checking. They're putting little kids to fake locations through time. Control your mind. That's what's recorded. You have all fake people that were raised child abused, but with acting coaches. A whole bunch of men and women. So in other words, they want to hide things about the past from other people needing to speak about them. So they made strangers make confessions to strangers with little boys and girls. So if one man in the Spada family would respond for the judges in the Delaferra family, and with the Schedule family, and with these people with the state judicial branch officers, and with Weathersfield Pizza, Maria Fazzino, and her confessions, and the rest of this, with this Town Line Oil, and with this Brian Bonin, involved with the sequence shifts, people now they say recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Rob, in other words, online too they said this. The people associated with Kalala, with the Weathersfield police, were switching and forging names, forcing them, switching them to roles. With these people, with the Robert Rodriguez, and people from other areas came here. And they made confessions to me, because when I wasn't living here, I was living in other spots. People tied to them, too. See, these are people with the intelligence community that connects them to racketeering here. Then you start talking, they try switching subjects that are inseparable. That person came over here, brought up the Scalora family. That was already recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved before the World Trade Center attack, involved with West Hartford. I didn't see them there. For the people that everyone's speaking through other too. Wethersfield Police do intercities involved with predicate acts with them, and with the DeMorrow family /S intercities through time involved with the locations next to Central Connecticut State University, and with people on all sides of it, where they're offensive evidence reception racketeering. Now they have the route from Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and the house on the corner of it, and a Hanson family is involved with various natures of drugs and medicines crimes. And now they aim with uses of the words crimes by prosecutors and judges criminally involved, and by the people that are privately tied to them, like the prisons, and like the doctors with the prisons, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with their patients and criminals before they were caught, and since to hide it, pretending only for their own reasons. That would, in other words, there are people higher than the FBI involved criminally. Same with the same cliques, and their co-defendants, the ones that went to my school, they recorded themselves, and I recorded them too. I didn't know I was recording the police chief, but that's what it turned out to be. That's what's actually recorded by what I recorded with my health class project, where they had private school kids making confessions to me in relationship to my neighbors. I didn't explain that to them because they were my neighbors. They exploit people's natural sensibilities to want to be nice, and not care about stupid things. Oh, that person's doing that thing wrong. That's a crime. No, see, but the people that are doing that, pretending people are doing crimes with passionate emotions, because they're needed to hide how they are recorded doing that criminally. They've been stacking fabricated audio and video already in cases every day. They can't help it anymore. They have witch trials. What's a witch trial about? They can't explain what the witch trials in Wethersfield, Connecticut are about. Can't explain American history properly if you don't know from Wethersfield history, from Wethersfield. Now these are doctors that are foreign and domestic involved with the houses on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and the businesses around the corner from it, with people that use my name, with sequence shifts, that people have wire crime and mail crime roles with them. The people that are against drugs and medicines crimes are the ones furthering them. They're attaching kids and their family members to fake locations, fake words, with the interbranch that are personally involved with them criminally for influence. They're keeping how each age of fact human nature wants to go about life and not get in trouble for things they shouldn't get in trouble for, or if they should, they're making it, only the ones that, they're keeping everything good and bad employed criminally forward influenced. So everyone's going to be a criminally foreign influence treatment of positive and negative. Everyone's taught to lie, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to lie. Since they're kids by the same courts, 4G names and switching names, intercities rolls with it from those locations. So we're going to have Judge Napolitano be our side. We're going to and take my message. Not message. Don't call me a message. People are messaging. That's what they teach in campuses from Austin. They make people defend. Just follow my logic. I mean, just not my logic. Follow what is true always, not denying exceptions. And now see, if people are going to come on here and pretend they're testing me or something like that, I'm not trying to speak about debatable things. I want a response for the rest of the confessions, a whole bunch of confessions on my phone, and demonstrations, and confessions regarding how they've been fabricating audio and video, falsifying police reports, stacking that, waiting to pretend they don't know. They're being coached to it by the police chief, and 1 year ago with the same house on my street involved with them, with wire crimes over the last few months. The same ones involved with Sandy Hook Newtown from Wethersfield, involved on and off involved with friends on and off locations downtown Hartford. People involved with it, they take pictures and pretend they know you. There's a Rick C.M. Faglione involved with men and women intelligence agency They use my name from downtown Hartford that are involved with Central Connecticut State University and with intercities, with campuses, with some Leahy family, attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations through time.